kind of be summed up in one short sentence, and that is, it's not about you, but it's not about building yourself up. Great leaders build great teams. As a leader, I've always tried to surround myself with strong people. And in some instances, people that are smarter than me, especially in their area of expertise. And that's not a threat, right? And you're all still driving toward a common goal. And so as a leader, you own the strategy. You're responsible for delivering the results. But my role is to clear roadblocks and to, help make the team successful.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we sit down with executive leaders to explore what leadership really means through the lens of their stories, their wins, their struggles, their vision, and their lessons along the way. I'm Ty Hammond, founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of the True Leadership Approach, an awareness-based path that helps leaders shift their focus from what to do about their problems to how to grow from them. Whether you're just stepping into leadership or are well-seasoned and at the top of your game, your potential won't be realized following someone else's script, but you can draw insights from their stories and turn it into wisdom by putting it into practice in your own life.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we explore the essence of leadership beyond tactics and performance by sitting down with executives to hear what matters most to them. I'm your host, Justin Houchin, and today's guest is Michael Heffner. Michael is a technology executive with more than 30 years of experience leading global teams in networking, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence. Over the course of his career, he has led large-scale product and business organizations and helped pioneer technologies like network virtualization, edge computing, and private 5G. Today, he serves as a fractional product executive and advisory board member at Aglocell, where he helps companies turn complex technology into practical products and real business results. He is known for bringing teams together, building strong partnerships, and helping organizations grow with clarity and discipline. It is a pleasure for me to have Michael on the podcast today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So Michael, who is someone from your early life or an early experience that shaped the kind of leader that you are today?
So that's always a great question. One of those ones that may require a little bit more deep contemplation. And I'll admit I'm going to cheat a little bit because actually two people popped into my head. The obvious one was my dad, and I'll touch on him second. But the other one, which was interesting, was my grandpa, my mom's dad. It's sort of weird because my grandpa passed away probably 30 years ago now. And so honestly, he's not at the forefront of my mind every day. But, when that question came up, like I said, he was kind of one of the first ones that came into my mind, which was a bit intriguing. And if I think back, most of my memories of him were kind of after he retired. So, he was around and we did stuff. But I do have strong memories of him when I was younger. And he was still working at the steel mill. So he worked in a steel mill in Pennsylvania. My grandparents lived in a small town in Pennsylvania. The town grew up around the steel mill. And so a lot of people in the town worked there. And I don't know if it's still this way, but back then, when it was time for a shift change at the mill, this really incredibly loud steam whistle would blow. I have this vivid memories of this growing up. And so when the morning shift came on, that's the one that he was on, I would be woken by this loud steam whistle. And, and if I recall correctly, it was so dark outside. So, this thing's blowing. That thing honestly scared me to death. But as I got a little bit older, I realized that with that whistle, I knew my grandpa was getting up early and he was going to work. And steel mill's not the easiest place to work, right? Putting in a hard day's work, providing for his family. Again, I was young, so you don't think about it much at that time. But, looking back, I always kind of had this strong sense of the type of work ethic that's required to go do that sort of job day in and day out. And honestly, it may be kind of old man syndrome now, but you just don't see that work ethic maybe so much anymore. It's still around, but it's not as prevalent. So that was, as I was pondering it, that was kind of one of the first things that popped into my head. And then, as I mentioned, the other one naturally would be my dad. My dad's actually the reason I got into the telecommunications business. And I always had this sense of him growing up as kind of a pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of guy. He again grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania in the 50s and 60s. After high school, he married my mom, so they got married really early, and then he was off to Vietnam. So it was, back in that time. Served a couple of years in Vietnam, and when he came back, he did attend school a little bit, but he didn't get a 4-year degree. Honestly, it was more kind of trade stuff, and then he went into the job market and then into the workforce. Um, and just, he worked really hard and, in the telecom space, and over the course of 25, maybe 30 years, I mean, he rose all the way up to the highest ranks of some of the biggest telecom companies of that day. So companies like AT&T and MCI and Sprint and Nortel, which doesn't exist anymore. But when he actually took early retirement in the late 90s, he was essentially senior executive reporting to the chairman and CEO of Nortel Networks. So I mean, you can see you kind of rose all the way up over that time period. And so that's just, again, that's more of that strong work ethic and determination and just really kind of putting in the effort to go achieve those goals. And so those are kind of some of the role models that I've had growing up, which kind of drove the way that I, approached my career.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is just how much harder it was for me. I grew up in LA
Mm-hmm.
and then became a musician, and
Mm-hmm.
it's got its challenges. But compared to the steam whistle blowing in the dark hours of the morning and going to work, and then just that, yeah,
Yeah.
that
Because
just
we only
some
lived a couple blocks from it. So, I mean, you could hear it. I mean, it'd wake you up from a dead
that's
sleep. And I'm like,
wild.
what in the world is that? So when you're 10 years old or something, that's like, oh my gosh, that's loud.
Absolutely. And then I'm curious if you'd be willing to expand a little bit more on how that discipline, that work ethic has carried you through into telecommunications, which I imagine, not imagine, I know is a technology that's constantly changing and moving and evolving. And Yeah, I'd love to hear more about how that work
Yeah.
ethic has served you in a, I don't want to say unstable, but constantly expanding and changing
Yeah. It's never
environment.
constant, 100%.
Yeah.
So if I think back to the beginning of my career, so I mean, when I went to college, I didn't study to go into telecom. I actually got a degree in aerospace engineering, so
Mhm.
something totally different. And it was just at the time in the early 90s. So, a change of, political leadership and things like that, just being in that industry wasn't necessarily a great thing at that time. I did get a job in that space, but I had an opportunity to go jump over from aerospace into telecommunications. And again, I'll admit, not, without some support from my father in making that transition.
Sure.
But like, I didn't know anything about it, right? So, you're coming in cold as an engineer in an industry that you don't know anything about. And I was fortunate to work at a company like Nortel at the time. I mean, the great thing about that is it was a great place to learn. There was no lack of opportunities to learn. So if you put in the effort, and I basically learned the early days of wireless telecommunications, back in the early 90s, as those standards were first being built. And so, yeah, I mean, you just, you can either work hard and learn it and, get into a leadership role, which I did pretty quickly over a couple of years, or not. And so, I was able to take advantage of that opportunity that I was blessed with and just go run with it and work really hard and learn a lot. And then, off you go. But to your point, I mean, the through the 90s and the 2000s and everything, I mean, like just, the technology change only accelerates, right? It's still, continue to accelerate. So, I mean, every time you think you've learned something, the industry moves 5 steps on and you're playing catch up again. So, I mean, it's a constant thing. It's not okay, I've arrived, I worked hard and here I am and I can just rest on your laurels, right? You're always learning, you're always chasing, you're always working hard, you're always trying to grow or you get left behind. And so that's just kind of been a core thing in my being is when I'm in something, I'm in it all the way and you put in the hours and you do the work and it's what you do.
Love that. Thank you. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you.
Yeah.
And then, so what does true leadership mean to you? And you just said you stepped into this role as a leader early on in your career, and have had many years in leadership positions. It sounds like. So, I wanted to ask, what makes a true leader in your eyes?
Yeah, and again, this is one you can think about a little bit, and you could think about it from a business perspective, and specifically look at business outcomes or financial results or whatever, and I can think of some people that would think of it like that. You could certainly look at it more from an academic perspective of having a leadership process or a system or something like that. But I think as I think about some of the best leaders that I've worked for throughout my career and the type of leadership that now I've tried to model as a result, beyond obviously what I mentioned in the beginning, some of those role models. I realize that it can really kind of be summed up in one short sentence, and that is it's not about you, right? Like, true leadership isn't about you. It's not about building yourself up. Great leaders build great teams. And so as a leader, I've always tried to surround myself with strong people. And in some instances, people that are smarter than me, especially in their area of expertise. And that's not a threat, right? That's great, right? It takes a good leader, a true leader to lead someone that's an expert in a particular area, right? And you're all still driving toward a common goal. And so as a leader, obviously, you own the strategy, you're responsible for delivering the results, but it's also your job to enable the team to be the engine that implements the strategy and delivers the results. So, as a leader, I've always tried to be in a position where my role is to clear roadblocks and to, help make the team successful. And most importantly, when the results come in, if they're good results, the team participates in the accolades, right? You're not hogging the awards, right? You want to make sure that the team gets the rewards of the wins. And if things go wrong, and inevitably they do, you also kind of take ownership, right? You got to be on the other side, and when and where necessary, you're kind of taking the arrows when things don't go right, and not pushing the blame off to the team. So I've worked for people that are like that, and I've tried to model that. I've worked for people who aren't like that, and and you learn why that doesn't work so well. But that's kind of how I've again tried to model my leadership with my teams.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I really admire the humility in that, in making it not about you, and it's not about how can I, appear to be in control, and how can I move up in the power dynamic in the hierarchy, but really like how can I get people together
Yeah.
to with a common purpose and actually make something happen.
It's tough. I mean, because
It is.
as you rise up through your career, I mean, there's the tendency to believe your own press, right? And just I'm successful or whatever, right? And it gets it can be hard at times to motivate people, especially big teams. And again, in the tech industry now, everything is so diverse and distributed, and so not everybody's in the office. It's multicultural, it's multinational. And so it's an interesting dynamic to lead large teams of people in different disciplines. And so yeah, if you make it about yourself and not about the team's success, like it just doesn't work, right? So it's all about having that ability to bring these different people together and make sure everybody's aligned toward that goal, and then and then drive that, right, and not be the one that has to make all those decisions and be the final authority, right? You enable people to do their job and be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And surround yourself with people who have skill sets and capabilities and talents that you don't possess. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Without that being a threat is the
Yeah,
big one.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I haven't seen the be too sustainable, in
Mhm.
the long run, to have the like, oh, I'm threatened by this person who's, next to me helping with me with this. So we need
Right.
to move them aside. Yeah. Yeah. So I really appreciate that. Um, is there a time in your career when your way of leading no longer met the demands of your work or your life? Like there's some kind of growth that was needed. Um,
um that growth was needed. I mean, you're always kind of growing and changing, like I said, with
yeah,
the change in technologies, the change in the team structures, the the teams get more spread out and they're not always sitting in the same place. Early in my career, we were all sitting in the same office, so you could just get in a room and have meetings and motivate a team, and the motivation is a lot different. When you're dealing with these highly distributed teams and cross-functional teams. Again, in my career, as I've taken on broader leadership roles, especially as a GM or a VP of a business unit, it's not just running one functional area, right? The last couple of jobs that I've had, it's been end to end. I mean, customer acquisition, product management, the defining requirements, the implementation, the R&D side, the customer delivery and support, when things go wrong. And so if through every one of those phases, the people are different, the motivations are different, the stressors are different. And so you have to be able to, excuse me, you have to be able to deal with those people where they are differently and what's going on in the growth of the business and customer issues and all that stuff. I mean, it's a very dynamic environment where the inputs are always changing. So you can't just necessarily have one leadership style. And it's like what I mentioned before, it's more of a guiding principle, but then you meet people where they are in that day, in that role, in whatever fire you're fighting at that time. And again, try to do it in such a way that, they feel enabled to make a decision to do their job to the best of their ability, that, you're still pointing the way toward what the strategy is and the team's always still moving that direction. But again, it's not always a one size fits all. So, and you've had to learn that, right? I didn't come into my career knowing how to do that. It's just something you kind of pick up as you incrementally take on more responsibility and work with, broader teams and more functions. And again, like I said, I've had the chance to work for some really positive managers where I can, see how somebody else did it, learn over the course of a couple of years, and then learn how to kind of model that as I take on more responsibility.
Right,
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's sounds like just staying present with what is actually
yeah,
happening with
yeah,
your team
definitely.
and with your people. That's definitely very in alignment with what we talk about here at True Leadership. Just being present with what's actually happening and taking a look at those sort of stock responses
Mm,
we have to certain situations, because it's not, you can't just make up like, okay, every time this happens I'm gonna this, and it's
right.
gonna work the same way every time. So
And
that's good to
and
hear.
you have to
Yeah.
adjust on the fly because again, I would be completely disingenuous if I sat here and said that I made the right decision every time or I had the right response
Oh,
every time. You get frustrated, and so things go wrong, and you fly off, and you realize that probably wasn't the best way to handle that, and you gotta make amends and continue to go. But that's all part of the growth journey, right? And it's again, when back to what I said before, it's not about you, right? I don't always have to
right.
be right. I don't always have to win, right? Again, it's the team, it's not me. So you look at again even what you're doing in a self reflection, and am I you know living against the principles that I'm trying to hold myself up to, not only the things I'm trying to hold my team up to. So that's it's tough, right?
Absolutely. So you're saying you didn't do it perfectly 100% of the time?
I definitely did not do it perfectly 100% of the time, but I am open to learning.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's all we can do, right?
right.
Oh, I love it. Um, so if you're thinking about your journey over the past few years, let's say, what's been the most valuable investment you've made in yourself for your own growth?
Yeah, I would say again, and I'm getting older now and later in my career. I would say that in the last 10 years and probably a little bit longer than that, I've done a much better job of managing work life balance. I've been more intentional about giving my time to other people. I volunteer at church, do stuff in the community, even with my own family. I mean, I've got kids now that are almost all out of college, but so back when that same time frame, that 10 to 15 years, with my own kids as they're growing up through teenage and college years, I mean, that's a formative time, right? And, as part of the leadership and the hard work and the dedication, again, you can go all in and put in the hard work and focus solely on your career, and then everything else gets shut out, and you kind of have to sacrifice those things. And as my kids are getting older, you have to make a decision like I need to be present and do those other things as well. Um, but I think the interesting thing, kind of tying it back to the early point I made, and this all kind of comes full circle, right? And when you realize everything isn't all about you, you stop us focusing solely on yourself, and you have a little bit better perspective, right? It's not about my career; it's about appreciation for all the good things that I have in my life, right? And that's been important, right? Because as I said, like not everything's always rosy. It doesn't always go. You don't always win. You don't always achieve the goal. But when you kind of have that perspective, right, it gives you the ability to see the positives, even in the midst of challenges, and not dwell on negativity for too long. You can control what you can control, and you got to let go of stuff you can't control. And so, like, that's an important thing, again, to tie back to leadership, because when things go wrong, your people are going to look to you, right? If you're freaking out and your hair's on fire, that's not a great look for a leader when there's challenges, right? They're expecting you to be strong, to be steady, keep the goal in sight, to navigate the team through the difficulties, right? And so, those two things, personally and professionally, I think tie very well together. Um, I also think about, the things that I've done and achieved, not solely through my own efforts. I mean, obviously that's part of it, but I've been put in good positions. I've had people mentor me and help me out as well. And so, again, now that I'm getting later in my career, I have an understanding of a responsibility to give back to the community, right? The community I'm in, and that's my family, that's, my friends, it's the people beyond that. And so, again, you kind of tie that back to the leadership perspective, and it's all about then the same type of thing you're doing with your employees, your team, right? It's building them up, it's enabling them to be successful. You can kind of balance those two things similarly, personally and professionally. Um, the last thing I would mention is, and this again ties to my kids somewhat, but I've been fortunate to spend time with kind of the younger generation, right? Not only my kids,
Yeah.
but youth at church and things like that. Young people coming up into their careers, just starting, and you kind of realize again as you're getting toward the end of your career, like these are the next leaders, right? You need to build them up and equip them. It's more and more important that they're equipped and they see you model the right kind of leadership, that then they can come back and just like I did when I was young in my career, they have that same kind of model that hopefully they'll take those lessons and then apply them and then, just kind of pass it forward. Right. So in many respects, some of the hard lessons I've learned in my career, I've been able to apply to my personal life, and like I said, vice versa. Things I've learned during my personal outreach and just, having that balance and doing things not specifically related to work has made me a better leader at my job for my teams, right? So it's a good balance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's, I think, essential that people are taking time for both of those things. We can see sometimes the entirely 100% career driven
Mhm.
person is sometimes missing some of the humanity that you get from being of service to your family, or if you don't have a family, your friends circle,
Right.
or those uh yeah, those social groups and things we're a part of.
We're all in some kind of community, right? I mean, hopefully you're
Absolutely.
not going
Yeah.
through it alone, right? So you got your friend group, you got, you do have your family close or not, you've got social groups that you're involved with. I mean, and just like I said, we all live somewhere. If you look around, there's people that, that need help, that need mentoring, that need coaching. And I've seen a lot of things, even just, not even like a social kind of thing, but on the business side. I mean, like there's,
Right.
I've got friends now that are part of, business coaching types of companies where like startups come in and, just need help kind of getting their business up and running, and just the basic foundational blocking and tackling. How do I register my business? How do I get an EIN? How do I do this, that, and the other thing? And so, I've got some guys I work with that are now kind of semi-retired that do that as a side gig, and it's really cool, right? Just, again, helping people realize their dreams. So it can be any kind of community thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. So what's your vision for your leadership, your legacy, or the impact you'd like to have in the years ahead?
Yeah. So, I guess when I think about that, I'd probably start with the legacy part first. That's the thing that stands out.
Hmm.
And when, and I didn't necessarily come up with this. I heard this, and I can't remember where now, which is a bit unfortunate. But
It's fine.
you think about legacy, and it's not about your titles, right? It's not about who you worked for, how successful you were, how much money you made, right? Your legacy isn't any of those things. I think your legacy is measured by whether you left a place better than when you found it. That's kind of one of the first things that comes to my mind. And so interestingly enough, then I kind of tie that back to a personal thing. And I have boys, I have three boys, right? And so they all went through Boy Scouts. And if you're familiar with the Scouts, like one of the 7 principles of scouting is leave no trace. And again, they're all young teenagers, so they're generally kind of goofballs at that time. So you spend a lot of time, like you go to outings and you're telling them like, take only pictures, leave only footprints. Don't take anything with you. Don't leave trash, right? It's just, and it's the same vibe, right? Leave the world better than you found it. And so like, I think that's a more of a legacy thing than I was the, VP or president or GM or whatever, right? It's, what am I leaving behind? So that's kind of how I view it. And then as far as, my impact or how that kind of impacts what people think about me, like I hope they think, I worked hard, delivered results, try to do what's right, lift others up to be successful. That's again kind of what drives me. That's kind of what gives me satisfaction. Is I mean, being successful is great. Watching other people be successful and helping them do that is even more cool, I think. So for me.
Absolutely. That's funny you say that. When you first said leave it better than you found it, I thought I'm an Eagle Scout and I'm
There you
oldest
go.
of 3 boys. We're
Okay.
all Eagle Scouts. So
I got one that made
you and my
Eagle.
dad should talk.
Yeah, I got one that made Eagle. I got one that got to the last step and then he aged out. They both did their projects, which were insane. We could have that conversation offline.
Yeah.
And then the third one went in and he didn't get all the way through, but he did it for a few years. So, but yeah, all 3 went through Scouts and it was great. I mean, they know how to cook, they know how to do their laundry, they can take care of money. So like just those basic life skills, man, it's,
Oh, it's invaluable. I use it
it's
all the
helpful.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
definitely.
just in general, just to reflect what you were saying, the uh leave it better than you found it is one of those just really simple, not always easy, but
Mm-hmm.
simple, straightforward just axioms, I think,
Yeah.
that I live by naturally, and it's how can you go wrong with that?
Yeah. There's a lot of,
Yeah,
selfishness in the world, right? And, I just think that you don't need to be one of those. You just need to think about the people coming behind you, right? And just what are they going to do again? And as I have kids, right? So you think about it from having kids
of
and
course.
just that legacy, right? It's just I want them to have a chance to do better than I did. I think I've had a great chance based on my parents to do better than they did. So it's just hopefully everybody has more opportunity, if they given the chance. So
Love it. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Um So where are you feeling in your career? We'll switch gears a little bit here. Where are you feeling most tested right now, and what challenges are stretching you, would you say, in your leadership or in your life?
Yeah, kind of all of the above, right? And just in terms of this answer, but so in the last month, I've embarked on a career transition. So in some sense, it's liberating. In others, it's like terrifying, right? You gotta go through the process. And I'm an engineer by training, so I'm very analytical and have to have everything planned out. My wife would attest to that. So not knowing all of the actual steps to get to the end point, can be a bit unsettling. But I have a goal, have a plan. I'm executing it, so all is well. The other thing though, and I had this conversation with Ty recently, like in the last couple of discussions, right? When you're not working for somebody else and you don't have that external pressure, you know, to really rely on your own focus and your own discipline to realize your potential and achieve your goals. I mean, that's just a different place when you can kind of set your own schedule and not get distracted and really just kind of stay on track and keep first things first. So that's just been even a growth in my career, right? It's a growth step for me to just make sure you're still keeping the priorities and focus and doing the next thing, taking the next step, and still working to achieve that goal. So that's really kind of what I've been doing, and just refocusing my efforts on making that a success. Um, and so just and kind of to tie that off. So like the last couple months now, what I've really been working on is launching this new business, and so it's going to be a consultancy, Trinity Consulting. And it's really focused on, as you mentioned in my bio, so it'll be fractional leadership, really helping grow stage companies in the area of product strategy and product marketing and getting to market and achieving their revenue goals. And so I'm excited about actually getting that out into the market and launched and really getting going on that in a meaningful way. So that's just, and that's, it's career, it's leadership, it's my personal life. Like it's all intertwined there because like all this stuff is the same now. In terms of the outcome of that success, but yeah, it's been pretty cool to work on, and I'm excited about getting going in the next steps.
That's incredibly exciting. Yeah, I really wish you the best on that. I hope that really takes off.
Yeah, thank you.
I can imagine it would with somebody with your experience, and it is just so it is once to break off and do 100% your own thing and be on your own time. Something I struggle with as well. It's
Oh
just because I have to.
me too.
Yeah. Constant struggle with that one,
Yeah.
but that's beautiful. So the last question, this is more of like an invitation. So I just wanted to give you time and space to offer our listeners whatever's on your mind and heart right now, anything at all. So take your time with this. The floor is yours.
Okay. Yeah, I think the themes around kind of who I am and what my style is hopefully has come through on this. I would just say to kind of sum it up, my thought is that beyond the obvious responsibility that comes with leadership, right? And there's a lot of responsibilities that comes with that. It's just important to remember that leadership's a privilege. And so I've been privileged to be in a leadership position directly managing employees for the last 20 plus years. And lots of them and all over the place in different cultures and different ages. And just, like I said, and it's been, hopefully I've had a positive impact on them, and I'm still very close with a lot of those people, and so I think that that's true. But I've also grown through my interactions with them as well, and you just realize it's kind of a delicate balance between managing your own development as a person, achieving your goals, right? Because everybody's selfish in that way a little bit, and just I've got things that I want to achieve, right? But I don't want to do that at the expense of the people that work for me, right? So I have to ensure that I'm nurturing my team at the same time, so that they can be successful. And so I kind of go back to that thing that I opened with, which is I always have to remember, and I have to remind myself of this before. It's like it's not about me. I need to help others grow and thrive, and eventually, if they're in that right spot, to move on and become leaders in their own right. I mean, you want to see people move on and go do their own thing. I mean, that's all part of the journey, right? But if you do that and you're successful, then I, as a leader and my own goals, I'm going to benefit from that relationship. I'm going to, have a better chance at achieving my goals as well. So, I view leadership as not kind of the pinnacle. It's just, like I said, it's more of a privilege, and you're kind of a custodian of that role, where it's not just you and where you are in your journey, but kind of everybody else that you're involved with, people that report to you, people you work with, even your superiors. Everybody's got a superior at some level, right? And you have, the responsibility to deliver to them as well. So yeah, you just got to keep that 360 view and just make sure that it's not, don't take it so serious. It's not, it's not about you, right? It's about the team and the goal. So yeah.
Beautifully said, Michael. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your wisdom and everything you've shared with us today. I'm sure the listeners are going to get a lot out of this. Thank you for being on the True Leadership Podcast.
Yeah. It was great. It was nice to meet you. And yeah, again, thanks for the time to talk.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
That's it for this episode of the True Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by One Mountain Leadership, where we help leaders grow the capacity, confidence, and presence of true leadership through the True Leadership approach. To learn more about the approach, our offerings, our community, and how we can help you realize your potential in both leadership and in life, visit us at onemountainleadership.com.